Hello everyone. The research proposal our group decided to study was Abuse Tactics Within Male Domestic Violence Partnerships. Authors of this proposal are Charlie Taggart, Stephanie Jacob, and Haley Miller. We all had a common interest in studying domestic violence. After extensive research, we as a group realized an interesting population to study was male domestic partnerships. Previous studies regarding domestic violence have been largely focused on heterosexual couples and neglect homosexual males. We thought it would be interesting to study how male homosexual population is affected by intimate partner violence and common power and control tactics used for abuse of a partner. So the second slide talks about domestic violence portrayed in the media. And so the video on the left is a 2015 Super Bowl ad that came out during the whole Ray Rice situation. And so in the video, it is actually a 911 call. And so the lady calls 911 and the operator says, 911, what's your emergency? And she says, hi, I want to order a large pizza. The operator says, ma'am, this is 911. This is not the pizza delivery place. And she said, yes, with pepperoni and mushrooms. And the operator says, ma'am, are you in trouble? Just say yes. And the woman said yes on the phone. And so the operator basically gets her help and stays on the phone with her. And so it was a pretty strong video, very impacting, and it was actually a true 911 call. And the video on the right is a Keira Knightley domestic PSA. I recommend that you guys watch these videos. They're very strong and powerful, like I stated before. And so she's coming back from a photo shoot, and she comes in, she sees shattered glass, and she's washing her hands, and she sees her significant other, you think, in the video, and she explains why she's late, and he punches her, and she says this was not part of the script, and he continues to hit her and kick her and physically abuse her. And so this is a strong PSA as well. And so most media outlets don't talk about male victims. They portray males stereotypically as strong, and they don't get abused, and they're usually the abuser. But as studies show, there are a lot of male intimate partner violence, and we want our social workers, police officers to not have stereotypes and to be advocates for these victims.
So in regards to male couple intimate partner violence, it's kind of an understudied group just because a lot of people don't understand what actually goes into it, and kind of some statistics that give us a picture of, how it occurs and how much of it occurs is that roughly among 2/3 of gay male couples experience IPV, and that could be from either partner in a variety of ways of power control tactics. And 500,000 of the 9.5 adult gay males in the United States are victims each year. So that's the 9.5% of those people. So that's a lot of victims. And the abuse rate is around 25 to 35% for these partners. And so that's really just what is reported and what we know of. So underreporting is a major issue with this, though, so there's a lot of numbers that really go unknown. And so it just kind of gives us this picture that this is a social problem and one that needs to be dealt with. And so this research is going to dive further into that.
The goals of this presentation are to inform how homosexual males experience intimate partner violence and the common abuse tactics utilized by the perpetrator in these relationships. We will also discuss current research on the topic, how intimate partner violence among gay male partnerships relates to social work and other helping professionals, and our suggestions for future research. Prior research on intimate partner violence has focused specifically on heterosexual couples, leaving little knowledge as far as the effects of intimate partner violence on gay males and the LGBTQ community as a whole. What researchers have found in the studies conducted thus far is that the abuse tactics of internalized homophobia, societal stigma, and abusive gender roles are unique aspects to intimate partner violence among gay males, which are not evident in heterosexual couples. We chose this topic to further explore male intimate partner violence relationships so that more can be known in order to provide more appropriate, effective services for this community, as current services are tailored to heterosexual couples. The purpose of this study is to answer the research question of which abuse tactics are most significant within male couple intimate partner violence, in which we will focus specifically on the tactics of isolation, homophobia, societal stigma, and the abuse of gender roles. We hypothesize that isolation, homophobia, societal stigma, and the abuse of gender roles are critical factors involved in intimate partner violence among gay male relationships.
So when it comes to the methodology of our proposed study, it is exploratory in nature, the design, in that we're exploring what is really going on in these male intimate partner violence relationships, what tactics are being used, and what's really describing this population of victims that we don't fully understand yet. Our methods are mixed in that we'll receive qualitative answers from the surveys that are administered to our voluntary participants, and this will be converted into numerical data for comparison purposes and enable us to understand this population in a way that can be written on paper and that other people can understand as well. And percentages and data is a good way to do that. It's going to be a cross-sectional design. The information's just going to be collected at one time. It's not going to be longitudinal. We're not going to follow these people. It's already a hard-to-access population, so we're going to make it mixed modes of administration through mail and email. That way, any of our participants have access. Even if they don't have email, they can use the mail option and vice versa. So it's a pretty simple design process that we are proposing here, but hopefully it'll give us a larger understanding of what's going on in these relationships.
So in our study, researchers will reach out to a series of LGBTQ online forums and websites that cater to LGBTQ populations and social media platforms including Facebook, Twitter, and other blogging outlets. Another group of participants will be gathered through LGBTQ organizations within local college campuses and gay and lesbian festivals and events within the community. Physical and email addresses will be gathered according to participants' access to technology in order to administer tools. The snowballing technique will be utilized after finding initial participants due to the difficulty of accessing a large pool of participants. Then participants in the study will be asked to share the web address and study information with other potential participants. Participants will receive an incentive of $5 gift card to Amazon upon initial participation and will receive an additional gift card for every referral made. The study site will take place in the participant's home as they complete the questionnaire and send it back to the researchers via mail, electronic mail, and depending on their access to technology as mentioned before.
We will be using 3 different measuring tools in our study. The internalized homophobia scale will be used to test the extent to which the participants' negative beliefs about homosexuality are internalized and negatively impacting their mental health in regards to shame, guilt, depression, and feeling a sense of worthlessness. It is a 9-item scale with sample statements including, "I wish I weren't gay," and "I feel that being gay is a personal shortcoming." The responses incorporate a 5-point Likert scale ranging from 1, strongly agree, to 5, strongly disagree, in which a higher average score indicates greater internalized homophobia. This scale is reliable because it offers a distinct selection of answer choices for the participant to choose from. However, a limitation might be that the survey is only taken once by the participant, and their responses depend on their mood, attitude, and events of that particular day in which they take the survey. This scale is valid in that it is measuring the intended measurement of internalized homophobia through the specific items on the scale, which are intended to measure the attributes of this concept. Its reliability may be compromised by the fact that the survey is only taken once, so responses cannot be compared to evaluate consistency. The Stigma Consciousness Questionnaire is a tool which will be used to determine the extent to which each participant as a target of stigma expects to be stereotyped by others, or the overall psychological effect of societal stigma. This measurement is a 10-item scale in which participants respond to statements along a 7-point Likert-type scale ranging from 1, strongly disagree, to 7, strongly agree. The average is then calculated, in which a higher number indicates greater expectation for prejudice from others regarding their homosexuality. Example statements within the questionnaire include, my being a homosexual does not influence how heterosexuals act with me, and most heterosexuals have a problem viewing homosexuals as equals. This scale is reliable in that a person has a concrete selection of answer choices in which to choose from regarding the concept. Participants will only be taking the survey one time, therefore it needs to be taken into consideration that events of that particular day could have an influence on their responses. This is valid in that the specific questions within the tool are effectively measuring what is intended, being the ways that individuals think that society views them in a negative manner. The last scale that will be utilized in this study is the Masculinity Attitude Stress Conformity Scale, which is a self-report questionnaire containing 108 questions. It will be used to measure the levels of masculinity conformity and will provide further insight into the use of gender roles within abusive relationships. It will do so by measuring the participants' levels of conformity to masculinity regarding six subscales: suppression of emotional vulnerability, avoiding dependency on others, self-destructive achievement, which is defined as the willingness to sacrifice relationships to succeed at work, striving for dominance, aggressiveness, and traditional views on sex and sexuality. It is a reliable measure as it is a longer questionnaire with more room to evaluate and categorize participants' responses, and the participants can take it multiple times. It is valid in that it is measuring the use of gender roles as intended and how these are viewed and acted out within male intimate partner violence relationships. However, its limitation may be that it is only measuring masculinity and doesn't really include the concept of bidirectional aggression within this concept, which is another important aspect of the researchers. These scales will be sent to participants via email or mail following consent and a letter of purpose. They will be anonymously filled out and sent back to the researchers through the same communication medium. Answers will then be coded into quantifiable data to be used for future programs and research to aid victims of intimate partner violence in male relationships.
There are many limitations in our study. One includes the length, which is the measurement of the study. We have a 108-item tool, and so while participants are taking and answering the questions in this tool, they may be tired, so in order to finish the questionnaire as fast as possible, they might circle answers that actually don't pertain to them. Another limitation is method of receiving results from domestic violence victims. So we as researchers require participants to mail or email questionnaires back. Due to forms of control such as access to mail and email, male IPV victims may not be able to respond from their homes. Another limitation is there is no age limit to the study, which can affect generalizing the results. Another limitation is the study is missing a group of men who have not publicly identified themselves as gay to their peers or the public, and may have encountered male IPV as well. And so males that have not openly identified their homosexuality, they wouldn't be participating in the study, and so we're missing a large group. And another limitation is the internal validity. It may be threatened due to lack of a control group and a true experimental design. And the last limitation is external validity, which is solved by snowball sampling.
So in conclusion to our proposed study, we've gone through a lot. We've covered a lot of information and information that we're hoping to find. And we're really hoping that this is going to show us that abuse tactics in these homosexual relationships do differ from the heterosexual IPV relationships. And you know, if this is proven false, it'll show us that we need to do more research. Because we know this population is different. We know that things are done differently, so we need to figure out what exactly that is and what forms of power control are being used so we can better understand how to prevent and fix it. And who this would affect would be, you know, social workers, because those people come in contact a lot of times with victims of crime, violence, maybe the mental health that is associated with abuse, and other human services professionals, kind of along those same lines. First responders, this affects them greatly in that if they show up to a domestic call, a lot of times they even have limited understanding of what goes on in heterosexual IPV relationships. So figuring out what these tactics are and what shows us that abuse is going on will really help them understand the homosexual IPV relationships, and they'll know what to do moving forward. So it could really open the door for new training protocols for first responders, whether that be policemen, medical experts, anybody that would get that call and show up on the scene for a domestic dispute. This would affect health workers as well, those who are maybe experiencing the physical abuse or, to a greater extent, great mental anguish and ending up in a hospital. And so these people will be able to recognize those signs of abuse and be able to move forward in getting those victims help, even if those victims don't want to come out for reasons that we've already discussed previously, and that it may actually be a form of abuse. Their abusers having them keep that information in, or they might not see it as abuse. So if we as responders can understand what's going on, then we'll really be able to help these victims. And so ultimately we want to find out, what are these tactics? Do they differ? How this can be implemented in domestic violence shelters and to benefit not just heterosexual couples of women and children, while that is important, but paying attention to the males and what they need that differs from the heterosexual IPV population. So that concludes our research proposal. And with that, Haley, Stephanie, and myself, Charlie, would like to thank you for taking the time to view this. And until next time, until our next study, thank you.